I'm only a little nervous, like only this much. It was easier yesterday with someone's slides I didn't know. This is so much pressure having my own slides, because if I mess up, I may be judged for it. All right, so we're going to go over the state of Go today, and I really thank you for ending the day with me at this awesome conference. Congrats, this is an amazing community, and I've really enjoyed my time here. And speaking of community, this talk's going to be a little bit more community heavy than State of Go talks usually are, so I hope you enjoy it. But who am I? Why am I up here? A little bit about me. I joined the Go community because I was working in companies that were primarily Go shops, and I started off as a community organizer. I had a meetup in San Francisco and still have it today, and I ran a conference as well in San Francisco. A couple years after that, I joined GoBridge as a core team member, and this year I will be partnering with Women Who Go to help them with their diversity fund. Really fun fact is I've only been on the Go team for 3.5 months, and I've only been at Google for 3.5 months. I was in startups before. This is my first talk as a Go team member, which is why I'm a little bit more nervous. But it's very exciting, and I think the most important thing to know about me is that getting paid and getting credit for something that I've been doing for free for a long time is pretty much a dream come true for me. So this is like top level amazing. I can't believe that this is my job. So what are we going to talk about today? I've changed these slides a little bit over the last couple days based on the conversations that we had yesterday and a couple I've had this morning to kind of cater it toward some of the discussion we had in the panel and some other questions I've gotten from the crowd here. So we're going to define Go a little bit more holistically. We're also going to talk about what is time like in a programming language. We're going to hear from some Gophers. We're going to talk about our growing community. We're going to discuss the 2017 survey results. And then we're going to really dig into what contribution means in this open source project. So what is Go? What is its function, and why is it structured that way? There are really a few core goals of Go, and people have gone over them during this conference. They've gone over them before, but in just a really quick run through, Go is meant to eliminate slowness, eliminate clumsiness, improve effectiveness, and improve scale of your code and your projects. Important things to kind of keep in mind when you look at these things are that Go is designed by people and for people that read, debug, and maintain large software systems at scale. And the purpose of Go, it's not to dig into the debate about how to effectively do program design for languages. The purpose of Go is to make your life as a developer easier. And so let's talk about time a little bit. So in 2007, Go started as a 20% project. Who knows what a 20% project at Google is? Okay, so before I joined Google, I actually didn't know what a 20% project was, and I didn't know, I'm embarrassed to say, that Go started as a 20% project. So a 20% project is something that Google allows its employees to put aside time to dedicate 20% of their time to something that inspires them, that they feel passionate about, that will either help Google and/or the world as a whole. A couple other notable 20% projects are Gmail and AdSense. So in 2007, Robert, Rob, and Ken got together with their collective brainpower and background in programming languages and some of the frustrations that they were having at the time, and spent their 20% time on creating Go for us. So 2 years after that, Go was open source. So they spent 2 years kind of in heavy development together, and Go was announced as an open source project after that. And gopher pops up, which we've seen a lot in this conference and we see all over the place. So just a quick shout out to Renee French for like an awesome mascot. Let's give her a round of applause. And 3 years later, Go 1.0 is released. So I think it's important to take into consideration what a programming language is and why it takes a little bit more time to do things. A programming language is the backbone of the things that you are building. It is important that there is consensus and that there is an understanding of the dramaticness that could be if something went wrong. And I think that Rob encapsulates that here. Consensus drove the design. Nothing went into the language until we all agreed that it was right. Some features didn't get resolved until a year or more so of discussion. So, now that we know what Go is and kind of how it functions, and that it's very important to the infrastructures that we're building in programming today, what do you all think about Go? So, I did a tweet, because that's what I do. I tweet things. And I have great discussions, but for me, starting discussions online is just a very powerful tool. So I used this tool and I asked, why do people even like Go? What is it? What is it about them? And after getting a really nice amount of responses, I kind of just broke it down into 3 main categories that felt right to me. Fun. I know this is kind of an odd one, but Go is one of the first places where I went to a conference, a technical conference, and I have been to many of them, where it just seemed like at GopherCon in like 2015, everyone was having a good time, and everyone was smiling and excited and motivated, and the conversation were not as serious and like intense. It was more like, we're having a great time as part of this community, and so I'm just starting this off with some fun. So Brendan here says, Go is the only language that passes the does it have a stuffed gopher for a mascot test. The rest is synthetic sugar, which I just love that. Yes, the mascot is fun. It creates the brand and the energy around the people. It gives us something to just play around with. I know that I have my gophers lined up on my desk in the 5 colors that I have, and it's just nice to look at them. And then Brian says, Golang is simply fun to write, but as a byproduct, it's a language that inspires innovation. So why is fun on this list? If you're having fun, you can relax. If you're having fun, you can feel inspired to innovate. And innovation is at the core of the success of an open source project. So growth and support. Matt here says, it allowed me to build a team that could grow around the code instead of the code growing around the team. Fatih says, Go made me a better engineer. It gave me the chance to help others and impact people from all over the globe. It allowed me to grow up in my career. I found jobs that let me work remotely and spend more time with my family. So not only are you getting the support of a language that allows you the simplicity that Bill referenced earlier, but allows you that confidence to take the time and focus on other things that you need to have the fun to innovate, and to spend the time on other things that matter to you, perhaps your family, perhaps a 20% project. And then that leads us to just this overall branching feeling of inspiration. This is going to be pretty heavy, especially considering some of the discussions that we've been having all day yesterday in the panel. But I really love this, and I feel like I've heard this time and time again, so I'm so happy that I got some good quotes around this. And this is not specific to Java. This is just the call out here, right? After 7 years of Java, it made me love coding again. And we see 2 people replying. One of them is the engineer manager of Go, and it is really wonderful that so many people have been inspired to just have fun again. Now, does that mean one language is necessarily better or worse than the other? No. It just means that it let them do something else that they wanted and needed to do in that moment, and that is just the definition of inspiration. And then we have this. So the first sentence is, I stopped coding after 15 years in C, C++, Pascal dialects when Python, PHP, Ruby, and Java-style complexity became popular. So essentially, and you can read the rest for yourself, but essentially, the complexities of programming no longer became a fun thing for this person to do. And the fact that Go allowed them a simple, straightforward framework to just move forward in their coding made them feel fun, inspired, and give them that innovation that they needed to feel. So we're going to move into, we understand what Go is, we understand what the community is saying, and perhaps why we're here, why Go has been such an attractive language for so many people. And this leads us to something Russ says that really resonates with me. The most important thing I learned is that a successful programming language is about far more than the language itself. And we're seeing that. Some people are talking about Go does this or does that, but the overall branching themes of that tweet thread that I did was about the way that it makes people feel and the access that it allowed them to feel part of a supported and connected community. So speaking of community, and I like to make fun little words with the word gopher. So this is gopherific. There's many more that I have, but I was like, Google, first time up here as a Go team member. I won't go crazy, but in my next talk, there's going to be a lot of gopherific words. So we truly are a worldwide network, and I'm just going to go through in terms of community where we are in the world and what the makeup of our community looks like today. So when I first started in Go a handful of years ago, there was maybe a few global conferences. They were smaller, some were larger. They weren't really well connected. And now this year we're going to have 13 conferences all over the world in varying cities. And this is really wonderful. The other great thing about these conferences is that now they actually have these tools to all connect and talk. And so a lot of these conferences this year have decided on other dates because they realize they don't want to compete, have made it easier for speakers to have access to them through funds. And this is really beautiful. Altogether, these conferences serve about 6,500 gophers to attend. And that means these conferences are also not only providing a network event, right, because that's why people go to events as well as to learn, but then the content is available, so talks are recorded, you can keep track of things, you know what's trending in different areas of the world, which is really, really a powerful thing. Last year, I was part of a working group for Go, which is kind of how I fell into this is a lot of work, maybe like I should get paid to do this or something, because there's a lot of work to be done. And how I kind of proved that was I created a forum for meetups to register and just wanted a sense of how many meetups do we really have in the whole world. And got 125 meetups registered, which means there's 125 meetups in the world that need better support for their individual communities in their locales. And just, I went into GitHub Wiki, Golang's Wiki, and counted the countries of people that have registered companies within, that are using Golang, and it was over 50 countries. So just like, yes, like that's great, that's awesome, right? It's so cool to see how much we've globally expanded over the last few years. And then just pointing out a couple organizations that have empowered some of these things to happen. Women Who Go now has 26 chapters worldwide. That was about half that just, I think, a year and a half, 2 years ago. They provide workshops and tools and support for women who are learning and or very advanced in Go. And then GoBridge also provides for underrepresented groups workshops all over the world. So fun, just a few pictures. This is GopherCon, the first contributor workshop. So it was essentially a get-together of how can you go through the contribution experience with Go team members and Go supporters and really learn how do you get to contribute to the project itself. And then this is a couple days ago, so I don't know if anyone recognizes themselves, but this is Bill Kennedy's workshop here just a few days ago. And this is actually my meetup in San Francisco at Cloudflare. So everyone is engaged, everyone is learning, and it's really, really awesome. So if Go's purpose is to make developers' lives easier, how do we know how to do that, and if we are doing that? One of the ways that the Go team has decided to gather information from you to figure out what you're working on, what you need, is through a survey. So I'm just going to go through briefly some of the survey results that were interesting for this year. With the show notes or with the slide deck, I'll make sure to post the survey. So if you're interested in looking at it yourself, you can. It is the most recent blog on golang.org/blog. So last year, there was 3,500 Gophers that took this survey. For this year's survey, that number skyrocketed to over 6,000, which puts us at an upward tick of 70%. So this data gave us a really nice pool of content. So one thing that I found interesting myself was Go has traditionally been on the level of hobbyists, right? We know a lot of hobbyists that are using Go. But how is the upward trend of Go being used for your jobs really pulling? And so that went up this year. I'll be very interested to see if that number goes up further next year. A few other interesting points. This is just kind of a awesome/major props, because it's always nice to see something double or expand exponentially when you have a survey from one year to the other, to know that you're doing a good job in conveying what people need. And so last year was not great with Go support for various editors, and there was tons of work done. So major props for the Go editor support team that basically built out that experience to be substantially better, because the satisfaction rate doubled in 2017. There is also a 4% higher desire to contribute to the community and the project, and I think that that shows an upward tick of wanting to be a part of things a little bit more, and perhaps even, and I'd be curious to kind of study this more, understanding where those access points are. So are things like meetup groups and contributor workshops and making sure the conversations are happening in the room like this with people who are on the ground floor using Go in various locales, is that working to make you feel like you are connected and wanting to contribute? And then just because I'm open source, I love it, it's awesome, this made me very, very happy. 6% of respondents contribute to open source daily, which is rad. That's awesome to hear. It was about 5% that was weekly, and I think about 4% that was monthly. So even if this is just a daily number, overall there's a huge percentage of Gophers that are contributing to open source and Go. And then this one, which is very close to my heart, is I feel welcome in the Go community, which is so important and so valuable. And that number doubled this year in this survey. This is not the survey. So this is HackerRank, and I'm just correlating the community that we have now with the community that we could have tomorrow. And that's going to bring us into our next point. HackerRank had a survey where they interviewed about 40,000 developers, and they wanted to know, what programming language do you want to learn next? The option at about 37% was Go. So we're looking at people who are very interested in investing in Go and learning Go. How are we going to support all those new people? So let's talk about the future. See? Go-tastic? You like it? Yeah, you know you do. Told you there'd be more. So we could talk about Go as the future of the cloud language, and we could talk about enterprises adopting Go and more jobs of Go being available. But like we all see that happening to some extent. And over the next year, the Go team will definitely be on stage exploring those topics further. But what I want to talk about is how to contribute to the project and ways to contribute that are not traditional, not contributing to just the code, but contributing as a holistic community with each other and to the project, communicating more effectively and creating a feedback cycle together. So, what can you do? How do you contribute to an open source project? How do you contribute to Go? What are the very tangible skills that you could take from this talk today and go do it? It's 3 things. We're going to go over them. We won't dig into them too much because, frankly, I could give a talk of 30 minutes on each one of these and go into detail. But we're going to talk about building stuff, providing feedback, and supporting others. So first, building stuff. You're contributing by just using Go. By being in this room and using Go, you are contributing to the growth of the project, and I thank you for that. But Go needs to constantly improve, which means we constantly need people using it in new projects, in new ways, in new technologies. And we need a dedicated user base to show that Go is viable as a project and continue its support globally. So overall, Go needs use cases. They need to understand what you're doing and how you're doing it. And then after you do this, you can provide feedback. There are 2 main ways to provide feedback to the Go project directly, and so I'm giving you those very clearly. Notify us by starting issues. You go to that link, you create an issue, and Go has it. It is that simple. If you're having an issue that's more robust, that's more complicated, that really feels like something that is just, it's not working for this massive thing that you want to do, or it's something that you come upon again and again, and you don't quite feel like an issue is good enough, you can create an experience report. Who's heard about an experience report? Yeah, I thought it would be like 5 in this whole crowd. Yeah. So I highly recommend that you look into creating an experience report. I didn't put a slide of what one looks like, but essentially it's a more robust case study of what you experienced, why it was an issue, how perhaps you would fix it, or what you need the functionality to be, but in a more detailed way where you really provide us code samples and examples of how it affects your organization, your workflow, etc. So we know that we need to keep using Go, that we need to use Go in different ways, and that we need to provide feedback. Otherwise, how are we going to know what's wrong? But we have this huge community that's ever growing and that's going to continue to grow. So how can we support each other? So this, for me, is the core of an open source project. It is support. And it is not the support that you get from the leadership of the team, because yes, they are maintaining the project as a whole and keeping things moving forward. But to really impact your community and your project and the open sourceness that is Go, you have to support each other a little bit more holistically. And so how can you do that? And I have a whole nother talk that I've done on different ways that you can do these things individually in more detail. But I think that it's important to just go, I have X amount of time in my day. Me too, right? Like, there's only so much I can do. So if you can pick one thing out of this list, that one thing could be very impactful for 5, 10, 20 other people. So first, I'm just highlighting some of the access points that people learn about Go. So Go for Slack, Reddit, Quora are all options to just, if I'm searching a problem and I see that I know the answer to that problem, it's very easy to just type it up. If I'm joining Go for Slack and I want to make an announcement about wanting to start a meetup, or I want to answer a newbie question. These things are very powerful to show that we have an active and positive community. At companies that I've worked for, I do a lot around content. And I think that there's this sense of, oh gosh, create a tutorial. Like, that sounds really intense. So I will frame this with, yeah, you can create a tutorial, you can create a blog or a video about something that you learned or a tool that made your workflow that much easier, but you can also do a blog that's top 5 tips for X, Y, and Z. And for someone who's starting or having that problem like you did, that can be really powerful. It makes our content line more robust, and it allows us to have much more of a connection with others. And if you're wanting to do a little bit more, you could do something like organize a workshop for GoBridge or Women Who Go. These are very well put together organizations. If you email them, if you contact them and you say, I want to do this, they'll help you make it happen. You know your local communities so much better than the people who are not in them. So we need you to reach out to us and tell us that you need the help to do these things. You could start a meetup. So right before this talk for the recording, there was a gentleman that came up and he announced that he really wanted to start a meetup locally. And so I wasn't going to go too much into this, but I will, because I get this question more often than not. How do I start a meetup? Just start one. That's my answer. To everyone that ever comes to me and says, how do I start a meetup? You just start one. So you go on meetup.com and you create the meetup, and what meetup.com does is it sends out that information to people who may be interested in joining. Before you know it, you have 10, 20 people on that meetup page excited within the first week to join that meetup. And when it's that many people, you could start it at a local coffee shop. You don't have to have it at some large fancy company. You can start by just pair programming together. So it's very important that I just say, just go out and do it, because I believe that you will have people that sign up. So one of the things that I've seen over the last few months talking to companies is that a lot of companies are starting to teach Go internally at their individual companies. And this is really cool. I have one specific use case where an individual started a monthly kind of workshop night for people who are non-programmers that want to learn programming, and he's doing that with Go. So there's a lot of opportunity to collaborate internally and either talk about experiences that you've had and the way that you've done certain things, or to teach someone who really wants to go into programming and doesn't have the opportunity to attend a workshop, give them the opportunity at work. And then lastly, just ask. As someone coming from the community and being a meetup organizer and a conference organizer, the most helpful thing that I've ever gotten is someone just coming up to me and asking, how can I help? It is so important to just offer your hand. And I think that if we can all just do that a little bit more, we will see a lot more positivity filtering into our community. And it's also important, just going to add, to say thank you to your community organizers. It is a hard job putting together major things like conferences and keeping the willpower to have a meetup and run a Women Who Go chapter and do a GoBridge workshop. It takes work. But often just that thank you or that hand for help, it makes it all worth it. So, being the funny, corny person that I am, like my overbranching theme, I think, for this talk, as I was writing it, as I was changing it, I was always changing it 20 minutes before this talk started, I think it just ends with, we need each other to be successful. For Go to be a viable project long term, we have to communicate, we have to have a feedback loop, and we have to support new people in our community. And that's all. Thank you.
We can take questions. I think there will be a lot of questions.
Really? A lot?
No?
Any? I know. So much inspiration, you can't even handle it. Thank you. Awesome. Thank you.